Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 40 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I'm joined by Stephen Browne, co-founder and chief operating officer at Soars, and we're going to be talking about Web3 adoption in emerging markets. So welcome, Stephen. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Alex. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, let's start out with your background. I want to get to know you a little bit. So can you tell me kind of how you got into crypto?
I've been full-time in crypto blockchain for 5 years. Previous to that, I was a lawyer. So it was a bit of an unusual jump, you could say. I moved to Hong Kong from Ireland about 7 years ago, and I became general counsel for a Hong Kong technology company. And while there, I was tasked with opening up companies in different parts of the world, in unusual places in Central Asia, Central America, and turns out it's actually not that easy to do that from Hong Kong. And kind of the idea of late night phone calls and trying to deal with local providers in places like Nicaragua and Kazakhstan wasn't really that appealing to me. So I asked around, was there somebody in Hong Kong who I could deal with, who could take care of all of the local matters? And somebody said to me, there's this guy, this Irish guy, called Browne. He might be able to help you. So I called Browne and I said, Browne, this is my problem. And Browne said, I can do all of that. No problem. I'll be up in your office in half an hour. So I got to know Browne, and Browne at that point was advising some of the early ICOs on the legal and structuring side. And this is in 2015, 2016. And Browne, when I would meet for a drink, and he would tell me about crypto, and I'm still, it just wasn't something I knew about really. And the more I learned, I suppose the more interested I became. And then at the end of 2017, we were chatting about what's next in terms of our careers, etc. And 2018 rolled around, and we both resigned on the same day and set up Soars just at the beginning of 2018, right when the market started crashing. So it was fantastic timing, and just been going ever since then, really. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you really dove in just head first into this project. That's cool. Great. Can you tell us about Soars, what you guys are up to, and kind of the long-term goals too?
Sure, no problem. So Soars, the parent company, Soars, is a company based in Hong Kong and Ireland. And, our bread and butter at the start was, the traditional consulting advisory route. And, I suppose it's fair to say that's where we cut our teeth. At the start, advised and got involved primarily on the legal and structuring side, in a lot of ICOs, tokenized funds, and some security tokens. So our, view, from a long time ago has been, regulation is this piece to crypto that's ultimately going to feature, very heavily in the space. So that's been one of our guiding lights right from the start. And in terms of the business, we have our VASP license in Ireland, so a virtual asset service provider, licensed by the Central Bank of Ireland. And that allows us to operate with counterparties in a regulated manner, so people know who we are. We know we haven't just kind of walked in off the street. And in terms of our business lines, we have still our traditional consulting advisory. Then we have our portfolio companies, which these are companies we've invested in, and in some cases created from the start. They range from companies in the real world asset space, music and NFTs, GameFi, social tokens. And I suppose most importantly, or one of the most important pieces of our portfolio is two companies. One is a broker-dealer in Germany called Black Manta, which has got a license from the German financial regulator BaFin for the distribution of tokenized securities. And then also Fortuna, which is a regulated custody provider in Ireland. So, we really have a collection of things in our portfolio that keeps us busy. And then our consumer-facing line is called Sorted. So we've taken the store's name and we've created Sorted. It didn't take a marketing genius to work that one out. And Sorted is really creating products which we see there's a need for in the market, and rather than wait for somebody else to go about and create them, we've done so ourselves. So the first Sorted product was a launch pad, or a deal room, as we call it. This is a regulated environment for issuers to issue, utility tokens. That's been quite successful for us. And the next one is, which I think will form part of our conversation today, is our Sorted Wallet, which is a crypto wallet for emerging markets, primarily focused on, or primarily being released on an operating system called KaiOS, which is the third largest mobile OS in the world. So we kind of have a large variety of things we work on, geographically based between Hong Kong and Ireland, about 10 full-time people. And I suppose long-term goals is really growing all of the existing businesses we have and trying to do something useful in the space. I think is our simple and honest answer to to where we want to go.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if you want to talk about the Sorted Wallet really quickly, I definitely wouldn't mind. So I know that you guys kind of use the Venly API to help create this product. Can you tell us how they interact?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose just to take a step back, I've always been interested in unusual technology and underused technology, you could say. So as a child, I was buying vinyl players. As a teenager, adult, I was buying laserdisc players, mini disc players, odd kind of formats. I'd go down rabbit holes on YouTube about unusual music formats, unusual video formats, and things like that. Repurposing old consoles to run Windows or something like that. Would be an interesting afternoon for me. And part of that, over the last couple of years, I became aware of a mobile operating system called KaiOS, which runs on what people might describe as old style Nokia phones that people would have used 15, 20, 25 years ago, so before smartphones. And this was something I was aware of, knew it existed. Obviously no need to use it, but I was aware that this existed. And then about 18 months ago, Hong Kong being the entrepreneurial place it is, I met somebody and they said, we just randomly started talking about KaiOS, or it came up and they said, oh, they're actually based here in Hong Kong. And I said, oh, wow, that's interesting. And kind of, did some digging and found out, they have an app store, WhatsApp is in it, Facebook is in it, about 500 apps are in it, but there's no crypto wallet. And I said, well, this, seems like something that there should be a crypto wallet. And, really then that was the point where, we decided that we would do something about it. So I suppose to take a step back even further, just to give people some context. So KaiOS came from a large part the Firefox OS, which was a mobile phone operating system developed by Firefox that was used primarily, let's say, in the decade from 2010 onwards, roughly. And the team from that, after Firefox OS disbanded, reconstituted themselves, launched KaiOS, and raised a significant portion of their capital from the likes of Google and TCL, which is a large Chinese electronic manufacturer. And KaiOS is positioned at what's called feature phones. So feature phones are, look like those phones that were used, 20 years ago. So no touchscreen, no, fancy kind of features in them, really priced at around $20 to $50. So this is really a phone that people are getting for the first time in the life cycle of them owning a mobile phone. So it has an app store, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc. Slimmed down version of these apps exist on this app store, and having used the phone for the last year or so as my second phone, it works absolutely perfectly fine. So into this environment, we said, well, there seems to be an opportunity here for the KaiOS users, which they have about 130 million monthly active users. That this is a large number of people who are getting online for the first time. Probably are aware of crypto and Web3. Maybe it's something they're interested in, but have no means to access it. So that was really the genesis of it. And then obviously Venly came into the picture when we were looking at how we were going to build this, who were going to be reliable technology partners. Venly's name came to the top of the list, pretty quickly. So that's where our the sorted wallet journey with Venly began. And, now we're just, coming up to release. So.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, thanks. We appreciate that. And yeah, I'm definitely excited to see where that goes and how you guys kind of complete those visions and goals.
Well, I suppose, I'm taking a lot of steps back here, but to take another step back, it was our view, to take an analogy, for instance, it's often said that from my experience of going to mainland China, that, people, a large majority of internet users in mainland China immediately went to mobile. They didn't, have a laptop first and then got a phone. It was just instantly, let's get a phone. That's my primary internet device. So kind of that intermediate stage, which, from my perception and from what's researched about, let's say in Europe and the US, people of a certain age would have, first started out with a desktop, then moved to a laptop and then to a smartphone. So in terms of steps of technology progression, mobile is is probably becoming the first step. The desktop and the laptop are being left out in a large majority of cases. So the first device people are interacting with to get on the web is going to be a cell phone or a smartphone. So that's, tying that into crypto, we can't be relying on people to, to have access to a laptop and, download Brave or download Chrome and install MetaMask in order to get connectivity to, to Web3. So, and particularly then when KaiOS comes into the picture, and those people in emerging markets, are just simply not going to have the economic means to afford a laptop, or going to, even if they do have a laptop, maybe Wi-Fi is something unattainable to them on a regular basis. So releasing the wallet on a feature phone, we believe, will allow, I don't want to, we haven't released it yet, so I want to be careful what I say, but will allow, multitudes of people their first opportunity to interact with digital assets in a very important way. So, mobile, as much as in mainland China, how it became a huge driver for people getting online. We believe that mobile and Web3 is equally going to be as potent in the iOS environment of getting people involved in Web3. So that's kind of our take on it as it stands now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Would you say that the same kind of roadblocks exist for these kind of emerging markets and these economies as they do for the rest of blockchain and crypto? So I guess what I mean is, normally we talk about roadblocks and hurdles of, user experience or people not being super tech savvy. And I guess those probably exist in the markets you're looking at as well. But do you see others that are maybe more special to these circumstances, or?
I mean, I think my perception, and I know this is a well-worn path, but it is crypto is a very elite thing, and it is a very bubble type thing, and especially for people, working in crypto, there tends to be a lot of blinkers on, thinking that all we see is the world through through crypto, and everything is perceived in that manner, which is not going to work, frankly, in terms of onboarding people. It just turns people off. So, to take another step back, I think that being honest about that and saying, well, okay, you can abstract away a lot of stuff. Log in with socials, bury the seed phrase, all of that stuff, and you can get into arguments with custodial, non-custodial, etc. All that is fine, but I think that there comes a point where the way I look at it is, when I started in crypto 5 years ago, one of the questions I posed myself was, how soon is my sister going to start interacting with crypto? And 5 years ago, I probably would have said, oh, maybe in the next 10 years. And now 5 years later, I still think that's 10 years away. I think it hasn't gone mainstream yet. And, there is a growing percentage of people using it, yes, but it hasn't had that, so-called iPhone moment, that kind of ushers in mass adoption. So I think the problems exist not just for people in emerging markets. I think it exists, in developed countries also, which I know Venly that's one of the problems you guys are trying to solve also.
Yeah, definitely. So some of these emerging markets are really going hard. They're at the top level in terms of adoption when they do kind of start, even despite the bear market. Why do you think that is, and do you think that will continue to be the way it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think necessity is the mother of all invention, as the phrase goes, and I think when people have a limited set of options for transferring value, and those limited set of options in a lot of cases are expensive and cumbersome, they're more willing to try out, new ideas. So I think the adoption curve does move faster. You look at a country like Nigeria, I don't have the figures in front of me, but it's approaching kind of hockey stick territory in terms of onboarding people, because you have a large population, a large immigrant population around the world who, as is a well-known phenomenon with immigrant populations, they send or remit money back to their home country, to their families, to their friends, to their communities. So that's why you're seeing, a large part of the crypto adoption in Nigeria driven by that. And also, I think it's people, willing to, want to say this the right way. I think it's people who've been underserved so far. that trying something with less barriers to entry is more appealing. So I think it's the right mix um, in play in a lot of these countries that people will say, well, hey, I might be getting screwed on fees. This might be unreliable. I don't want to have to queue up for, an hour on a Sunday to receive the money that my sister sent me from London or whatnot. And, they'll try something else. So that's kind of how we see it as kind of creating this funnel, hopefully for us that people will say, well, let's download this, let's give this a shot and see if it can solve people's problems. So that's how we feel about it.
Yeah, makes sense. So on top of that, I guess let's build a little further. So what would you say are the key benefits that Web3 can bring to emerging markets?
I mean, I think fundamentally it can just make everybody part of the conversation. As in, even NFTs, again, going back to what I said, all of this is quite elitist, stuff. And, unless you have this, unless you have that, unless you have the other thing, you can't do any of this. So, on one hand, we're saying, Web3 is inclusive, it's decentralized, it's easy, blah, blah, blah. But, you need this, you need that, you need gas, you need an account, you need a laptop, you need this, you need to have the computer literacy to know how all of this fits together. And you need to be sufficiently interested enough to actually do all of the steps. So I think, I think what it's adding to the conversation is, making it's making more people a part of the conversation rather than just some, bubble at the center of it, which I think maybe we've a tendency to inflate ourselves sometimes. So, that's really important. That's really important to us. The idea of getting, thousands of people sending their first NFT, some type of document storage with NFTs, that people may not have, had before, building up, a financial history with crypto that maybe people might not have had before, so allowing people to participate in the digital world without, as easily as possible, and actually giving people a chance to be included in, the so-called digital economy that we're all supposed to be living in. And I guess that's what was really driving us from the start. And okay, it starts here, but once people have the seed of something, then we can start building, and grow with the user while they're creating financial history. More things can be offered when we start onboarding other partners in terms of NFTs and different documents and things like vaccine records, educational certificates, etc., that can be stored as NFTs. Then you start to have an interesting proposition where things that we take for granted in more developed markets, we wouldn't even think twice about, but actually form the building blocks of people's histories, employment histories, health histories, financial histories. When you start giving people those building blocks, then other types of change can start to happen. So there are things that are certainly on our vision for where all of this goes. And I suppose it's just important to point out that this isn't, in terms of how we're approaching it, this isn't a way to sell or to get people trading shit coins or anything like that. We're not interested in that. So at the start, just in terms of what we're doing, the wallet is only going to use USDC on Polygon and Matic as the gas token. So this isn't about finding an untapped market to start shilling coins to. That's not that's not how we see this playing out, and that's not the story that we want to be a part of.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, that does kind of lead me to another question, though, which is obviously there are going to be people that do kind of see that as an opportunity. How would you, yeah, I mean, in which direction would you want to go? Would you prefer to try and make sure that those people can't take advantage of the situation, or would you head more towards the direction of educating the emerging markets to be wary of that sort of issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's, we haven't fully bottomed that out, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't bottomed that out, and I think we'll just take feedback, from the users. We're going to launch with, very limited set of tokens available, and then just get feedback. I think that's about, I think that's about as all we can do at this point. Obviously, a wallet isn't even a wallet. It's just the wallet is on the blockchain. So, by its very nature, it's on the blockchain. So it's just a tool to interact with the blockchain. So, from that perspective, you do want to give obviously people complete ownership over, their address and what assets they choose to put into it. But as a business and as a venture launching this to, to emerging markets, we also don't want to, do something foolish or treat people in a foolish manner by, allowing them to, add any types of tokens or be susceptible to any type of scam or anything like that. So at the start, we're just going to take a very cautious approach and just get feedback from our users as time progresses.
Kind of on a similar track, how do you feel about play to earn style gaming, as it is something that's fairly popular in emerging markets? Do you think it's a good option for these people to kind of start interacting in the space?
I mean, personally, no.
Okay.
I kind of feel the play to earn thing it's on. I'm not a fan of it. I think it creates a class of, call it worker bees, at the bottom, creating, the different collectibles or digital assets, and then, it allows then people with, a higher income or more assets to come in and take advantage of it. So you can call it, on one hand, you can call it free market economy and capitalism. On the other hand, I think it's creating something that's probably, I just don't like the smell of, to be honest. I think the games have to be fun. If there is I think what blockchain can bring to games in terms of, keeping your assets and creating marketplaces for your assets, I think that's fine. But the play to earn piece, I think it's important that it happened as it's really progressed the conversation, but I don't think it's going to end up where it is now. I think it's the final version or the version that sticks will be a lot more nuanced than what we've seen before. So in terms of our target market, or we are discussing releasing a game that does have some type of crypto mechanic in it, but it won't be played. It won't be played to earn. Just kind of feel it's a bit of a race to the bottom. Is my personal feeling.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what I'm asking for is your expert / your opinion. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a bit, I think play to earn, I think it's changed. I think Animoca changed it recently. Like they've rebranded play and earn is the new, is the more sanitized, next version of it, which,
yeah.
which I can kind of get behind a bit more um, than play to earn. But fundamentally, the games have to be good, and if people are just playing crappy games to to get money to sell to other people, I think that probably has a limited shelf life. It's important that it happens because it progresses the conversation, but it has a limited shelf life, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. That's totally fair. Do you think then that, not necessarily in play to earn, we'll move off of that then, with token economies, can that be an effective route to kind of unlocking wealth for these emerging markets in the long run?
I think it can play a part in the sense that, a predominantly cash society, it's difficult for people to build, things like a credit history, financial history, etc. So if you are allowing people to transact in a relatively casual manner, as in, buying something in the store or, paying for a cab or whatever, you're creating a very basic financial history. And if you can create that, that's the bones of, allowing people then to, start using some, basic financial products in terms of taking a loan out, etc. To start a new business or to start a new venture, and in those ways, or to take a loan out to pay for their kid to go to school or to get a school book or take a class or whatever. So I think in those ways, allowing people who are primarily dealing with cash, some record of their history, should create wealth as an ancillary effect in the long run. On a country level wide, it's hard to say. CBDCs do feed into this conversation also, primarily, Nigeria is actually a great example, the Naira. I think, pilots have been done by the Central Bank of Nigeria. There's other countries, in Southeast Asia, obviously, China's looking at it very strongly. So how do CBDCs play into this also? That if you suddenly, not suddenly, but over the course of, let's say, 10 years, replace cash with CBDCs, there's negative things to CBDCs or potentially negative things, things like privacy, etc. But as a proposition, if you did replace cash with CBDCs, you would create a lot of financial records, and you probably would find a lot of people who are very fiscally responsible, who don't have a financial history, that suddenly, by virtue of the blockchain, they would have a financial history. Obviously, there's tons of negatives or potential negatives, but there's also tons of potential positives out of that. So I think how CBDCs play into this, and also that comes back to the question of accessibility. Especially in emerging markets, you can't suddenly turn around to a country of 100 million people and say, okay, well, everybody needs to have an Android phone that's less than 5 years old. It just won't happen. So I think creating technology that can be used on all types of hardware, I think is going to be very important, and that's what we're seeking to do with our small piece of the conversation with our wallet. So I think it's a multifaceted thing, and there's a lot of assumptions in what I said, but we'll see how it plays out. But I think the intersection of token economy, financial history, CBDCs, there's definitely something there that's brewing.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the kind of financial aspect is the the best or the only way to get these markets involved in Web3, or do you see other things, kind of the decentralized, the DAO portion, maybe being very helpful for these markets as well, or these regions?
I think the NFT piece is going to be crucial. I think it'll take on a different form than what we've seen so far. Like I mentioned earlier, I think it'll go down more the route of national identity card, vaccine certificate, health certificates, things of that, birth certificates, things of that nature, which is probably a good thing. Which is a good thing. I think so. The NFT piece will feature heavily. I think the DAO piece, in terms of creating communities, or if there's informal communities, they're already creating some structure around it. Perhaps, I don't know is the short answer, but I think perhaps. I think ultimately, if you're giving people tools to make decisions, on a localized basis, they're probably human nature would naturally be drawn to them, but it's hard to say. I don't really know. I think in terms of crypto and emerging markets, I'd say, gaming, NFTs, finance, CBDCs, travel also, I'd say, is another sector kind of caught up in this. So kind of all those, I think the intersection of all of those pieces is probably going to see a lot of people, whether they know it or not, being onboarded into some type of blockchain-based system sooner rather than later.
Sure. Sooner rather than later. So I do want to talk about your timeline. So you said before that you kind of pictured the timeline for your sister as like 10 years out. Would you put the timeline for emerging markets similarly, or?
I think it'll be quicker. I mean, I think from my perception, having lived in Hong Kong for a long time, and it's not necessarily a positive thing if anybody knows about it, but there's a large community of Southeast Asians who are in Hong Kong working various types of jobs, and that's a whole other story that's well commented on. But from my perception, having been here for a long time and seen seeing different billboards and talking to people, different things popping up every couple of years that are remittance services. Essentially, people are very quick to jump between remittance services and some blockchain-based remittance services, which I know, if they see even a small saving. So I think, the ultimate question, better, faster, and cheaper, will always win the day. So I think the timeline for emerging markets, when they see the benefits that it is better, faster, and cheaper, I think will, increase the rate of adoption. So I think for the likes of my sister, and maybe that's a bad yardstick to use, but I still think en masse, or call it the mom and pop types, is still probably a longer way away from becoming, really, so-called crypto native. But I think there's more of a chance of it happening quicker in emerging markets, and I think that's ultimately it's a good thing.
Yeah, that greater opportunity for reward sort of pushed, maybe. Yeah, great. Super. Then any last points that you'd like to touch on? Anything that you're really excited about with this topic?
I mean, I think what we're looking at is, the cell phone, mobile phone, whatever you call it, phone, is the first thing that probably people pick up in the morning, and the last thing that people probably put down at night. And across the world, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing is probably just a fact. So, we fully believe in mobile being not just an on-ramp, but, the usage gateway or primary usage gateway for people interacting with crypto, blockchain, Web3. So that's what we're focused on. And I suppose part of that story is, hardware manufacturers, are also forming part of our story. And then also telcos might seem like legacy systems, to some people, but, telecommunications companies, mobile phone providers, etc., cell service providers are not going anywhere. So kind of working with both of those constituents also is really important to us. Where we want to get to is having our wallet, pre-installed on phones, when they ship. We want to be working with the telcos, and we are working with some of them at the moment, in terms of turning, let's say, things like phone credit, into USDC, for example, using phone credit as a means of onboarding people into crypto, and things of that nature. So I think, mobile is super important, and, mobile isn't just an app. It's also the hardware manufacturers and the carriers. In our case, obviously, KaiOS are, our fantastic OS partner. So it's a combination of all of these things working together, which is going to make, the potent mix for, for getting, bringing the story onto the next step. And, ultimately where all of this leads is, Apple announced last week, for instance, buy now, pay later. They announced that, I think, a couple of months ago. They've announced a savings account last week. Some people might say it's the hyper-financialization of everything. That's very valid criticism. But, having your phone, Apple is probably taking a few strands of the finance rope and, just starting to make another rope. But, using that as an example that, once you provide people with one thing, it's easier to provide them with another, and tying everything together between software, hardware, and some type of financial product or access, I think is key. And I suppose in our small way, we're trying to be part of that story also.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. Very last question here for you. Who should we have on Venly Expert Talks next?
I think, going back to one of your questions earlier, I think, from local communities, not exactly like Bitcoin Beach, but, what local communities are using crypto, let's say in a really localized way, finding those type of individuals. I think they would have an interesting story to tell about, why they're using it and where they see the benefit. I know I'm giving you more work there to try and find those people, but
no, that's perfect. That's great. All right, wonderful. Well, then, thank you so much, Stephen. I really appreciate your time today, and it was really great talking to you.
Likewise. Thanks very much, Alex.
If you like today's episode, please rate, follow, or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you really like our content, join our Discord community, where there's always good conversation, exciting news, and live AMAs. Thanks for listening.